Hey, before we get started, a quick scheduling note. I'm going to be traveling a bit over the next few weeks, so we wanted to give you a quick update on when to expect the podcast and when not to. There will be no podcast this Wednesday or Thursday, and no podcast next Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'll also be gone on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the following week. I'll leave another note like this at the top of an episode if anything changes, but for now, that's the schedule you can expect. All right, back to the news. Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, March 28th, 2022. Welcome to day 433. A federal judge asserted that Trump more likely than not committed felony obstruction in his effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Quote, based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, end quote. The judge who wrote that statement, U.S. District Court Judge David Carter, ordered the release of 101 emails from Trump advisor John Eastman to the January 6 committee. The committee had subpoenaed Eastman's university email account, which he used to send key legal memos aimed at overturning Biden's victory. But Eastman sued to prevent the committee from obtaining the emails from the school, claiming attorney-client privilege. Judge Carter continued saying, quote, the illegality of the plan was obvious, end quote, and he rejected Eastman's effort to shield the documents, saying that Eastman and Trump, quote, launched a campaign to overturn a democratic election, an action unprecedented in American history. It was a coup in search of a legal theory, end quote. The ruling, however, has no direct role in whether or not Trump will be charged criminally. Meanwhile, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife sent 21 text messages to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, imploring him to take steps to overturn the 2020 election in the weeks after Election Day. Virginia Thomas, who goes by Ginny, regularly checked in with Meadows to encourage him to push claims of voter fraud and to work to overturn the election. Thomas also shared several false QAnon-related conspiracy theories, including one that said Trump had deliberately watermarked mail-in ballots to find potential voter fraud. In February 2021, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's effort to block a January 6 committee subpoena for White House records related to the certification of the election and the Capitol insurrection. But instead of recusing himself from the case, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas wrote in a dissent that it was baffling and inexplicable that the majority had decided against hearing the cases. The House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection said it will seek an interview with Virginia Thomas. Meanwhile, Jared Kushner is expected to voluntarily appear before the House committee investigating the insurrection. In text messages to Mark Meadows, Ginny Thomas suggested that she was in contact with Kushner regarding Trump's attorney Sidney Powell, who promoted false conspiracy theories about widespread voting fraud. Moving on, Joe Biden stood by his ad-libbed comment that Putin cannot remain in power, claiming that he was expressing moral outrage rather than articulating a policy change during his Saturday speech in Warsaw. Quote, I'm not walking anything back, Biden said of his unscripted comment. I make no apologies for it, end quote. Biden added that it was ridiculous for anyone to view his comments as a call for regime change, saying, quote, nobody believes I was talking about taking down Putin, end quote. Meanwhile, Biden proposed a $5.8 trillion budget calling for deficit reductions, a new minimum tax on billionaires, and increased funding for police and gun violence prevention. The 2023 budget proposal for fiscal year 2023, which begins in October, calls for $1.6 trillion in discretionary spending, a 7% increase over current levels. The White House projects that the proposed budget would reduce the federal deficit by more than $1 trillion over the next decade. Congress, however, is in charge of writing the federal budget and often ignores White House proposals. And finally, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis officially signed the Don't Say Gay bill. The measure, which is officially titled the Parental Rights in Education Bill, prohibits, quote, classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity, end quote, in the state's public schools, and allows parents to sue their school districts over alleged violations. And in the polls, NBC News says 46% of Americans approve of the job that Joe Biden is doing as president, the lowest mark of his presidency. 71% of Americans say they believe the U.S. is on the wrong track, while 22% say they believe the country is headed in the right direction. And Axios says 56% of Americans say Biden has not been tough enough on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, while 55% say they believe the U.S. should sanction Russia as effectively as possible, even if it hurts the U.S. economy. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Anditas.